G'day guys, Viv here again. I forgot to show you Hellsmith before in the other video about Pulp City and brushes. So here he is. That's Hellsmith. He's missing his horns. The horns are a pain in the ass to put on. Still not finished yet. I'm doing some work on him. The base I've sculpted out of milliput. It's Hellsmith, supposed to be walking down the sidewalk or on some pathway, smashing the bricks with his foot. It's got a lot of skin on him. Skin's really easy to do. A lot of people have trouble with skin. I don't know why. It's one of the easiest things to do. So I'm just laying down his base coats, then I'll start washing him, etc. If you want to know how I do skin, I might show you it later on when I get to paint up a second Hellsmith or something like that. That's Hellsmith. One thing that I do when I'm painting miniatures is I have a clean palette here. I use the lids from takeaway containers because they're really handy. And I keep a jar of water around the place, clearly labelled rinse. Now this is not actually rinse water, this is clean water. I don't know where my clean cup is gone, but as long as you know what you're doing, labelling stuff really isn't necessary. I label stuff because I'm a little bit forgetful. I take rinse water or clean water and I put several drops onto my palette, so to speak. Now whenever I paint anything, I take my brush. My tip is already nice and sharp. I put it in my water and clean it. I now have moisture in my brush. I then take my paint. And when you open your Games Workshop paint, if you have trouble with paint dripping from the paint pot, you don't have enough water in your paints. Always add, if you buy a new paint from Games Workshop, this is what I do. If I buy a paint from Games Workshop or I take one off my rack, I put 20 drops of water in it. Because if you open it and you're getting paint globbing down the side here, it's too thick. Games Workshop paints are too thick. I add water directly to my pot and I keep water on my palette. Anyway, that's a different hint and tip. So I clean my brush in the water. The brush is now moist. I put a little bit of paint on my brush. Now you're probably not going to be able to see it, but I've got a tiny little bit of paint on my brush. I put only enough paint on that brush to cover about 1 millimeter. I dab it off. Then I take my paint again. So my brush now has a little bit of water and a little bit of paint, and now paint on the very tip. Then I go ahead and do my lines. And what you'll find here is that as you paint, your tip will be nice and sharp. All the time, you'll get really crisp, clean lines. Your painting will become a joy. As I do that a few times, I go back to my water and I rinse it again. And I rinse it. Dab it off. I still have my beautiful sharp point, because anyone who paints with Games Workshop paints knows that if you don't keep on rinsing your brush in water before you go back for your paint, your brush is going to get real fat and clunky and paint's going to dry up in there. It's a bloody nightmare to work with. Games Workshop paints need moisture, so make sure you've got moisture on hand. And what you'll find is that your tip of your brush will be nice and straight. Now I don't go back to the water every time I take paint from my pot. Maybe every second or third take. And what you'll find is that the paint on your brushes will be workable for a lot longer. So that's one hint and tip, guys. I'll come back later tomorrow and talk about glycerin. If anyone uses paint retardant to help your paints stay wetter for longer, it is quite essentially glycerin. I'll talk about that tomorrow. Thanks guys, have a good night. See ya.